and change. So moving on to the identity and access management part of it. So really, SAMS Sigma enables a publisher to hold a centralized view of an individual, of individuals and organizations that interact with their system. So SAMS Sigma offers a standard set of fields that allow publishers to store data against their profiles. There is a default set of data, and we'll go through that when we look at the admin system in a bit. But it's very important to emphasize that this information is not constrained. It's extendable. We've got a system, well, we've got annotations that will actually allow publishers to add in as much meta information as they need to against their individuals and organizations. So this is very important, when we're talking about the independent aspect of SAMS Sigma. Okay, so moving on to the access management. So this is really about authenticating and authorizing users who wish to access content, and SAMS Sigma provides very standard ways of doing this within the scholarly digital publishing sector. So this can happen via username and password, IP range, which is obviously very common and widespread, shibboleth authentication, library card, and trusted referrer. So it supports pretty much all of the industry standard methods of authenticating a user. Okay, so if we look at traditional identity management systems, they typically stop at just providing a broad level of authentication, predominantly based on roles. But really where SAMS Sigma steps in is it additionally provides the level of access that an organization requires. So SAMS Sigma not only authenticates individuals, but we can actually authenticate organizations as well. So really these are the two aspects of an identity and access management system. So it's identifying the user and then actually giving full control to the publisher on what that user, so either an individual or an organization, is entitled to access. And this is not necessarily just on one content site. This could be across several content sites, and this is where the single sign-on comes into play, which we'll dig into a little bit deeper a little bit later on. So really the final part I want to highlight on this slide is the focus and emphasis on scholarly digital publishing. So there is a very specific requirement here to provide organizational level access. It's very typical for publishers to sell content to institutions, and then the institution will want to obviously allow its users to access that. So really that's about delivering content at an organization level. But more commonplace.
Before you go on, Greg, your slides are not changing, so maybe you can refresh.
Okay. So okay. I think
what is SAMS Sigma slide?
Yeah. Okay. So really, I think the emphasis now is on the scholarly digital publishing sector. So this is I will move on, but this is the final slide on this. So, okay. So I will move on. So a quick review of SAMS Sigma and what it is, and the users that interact with the system. So I'm just going to go around this wheel really. So I'll start with the publisher sales and customer services team. So really these users will interact with SAMS Sigma in order to create new customer profiles, create content licenses, define product content bundles, and find and manage their customer licenses. And we'll look at this in a little bit more detail when we go on to the demo of the user interface. Librarians, another a user of SAMS Sigma, and really here we're emphasizing the aspect of self-service. So it's the ability for all organization administrators, so for example librarians, to log into SAMS Sigma, update any information they need to about their organization, obviously view their active licenses and potentially expired licenses, certainly run reports on usage data, and then add additional administrators if that's a requirement. And the final user really is the end user, and these are the users that interact with the content sites. And what I will show you is the login mechanism that SAMS Sigma provides for these content sites to enable this single sign-on process. And at the bottom of the circle, we've got basically we've got what we term our publisher API. So this is a key aspect of SAMS Sigma. This really allows Sigma to be this independent component within a publisher's ecosystem. And it's really there to facilitate the integration with any existing systems that a publisher may have. For example, invoicing systems, membership databases, we see this a lot, and CRM systems. So, these are often deeply embedded systems within a publisher's infrastructure, and SAMS Sigma allows interoperability via its API. Okay, moving on to competitive space. I've briefly touched on this, the difference between the identity management systems that are currently out there and the access management systems. I know I covered this in a previous webinar, but just going back to what SAMS Sigma is designed to do. So SAMS Sigma is there to address the user access entitlement challenges within the scholarly publishing sector, and really the target market for SAMS Sigma is medium to large publishers. Often who will operate multiple content sites, generally from multiple vendors, although that's not essential requirement. So that really is the target market. And if you can see on the left-hand side of this slide, we've got the larger SaaS-based solutions that really specialize in identity management. Often these provide single sign-on capabilities, but really where we see the differentiator for SAMS Sigma is the ability to not only provide single sign-on, but also to provide this complex license-based access. So it's a step beyond the simple role-based access systems that you generally get with something like Gigia or Salesforce Identity. And when we go through the demo, I can show you how those licenses are created and how flexible the flexibility that publishers have to create those. And there on the right-hand side, we've really got this traditional access management side systems that do offer that flexibility, but actually, from what we've found, these are generally quite large legacy systems that are not providing an ongoing roadmap of enhancements, and they're far more integrated into a publisher's ecosystem. So that's really where we see the sweet spot for SAMS Sigma. It's really solving that need for publishers to be able to identify and authenticate users, but also to be able to offer them a rich set of entitlements, potentially spread across multiple websites. Okay.
Over to me. So this slide really is to try and highlight what some of the key benefits for SAMS Sigma. These are fairly generic. It is probably worth noting that we do find many more as we explore the opportunity with the customer, and I've never ceased to be amazed at how many things come out of that engagement with the customer. Just due to SAMS being such an embedded system at the heart of all of their operational touch points, it means that we really get to see into the heart of their business and understand all of the relationships that they currently have set up and how we can assist them either via SAMS Sigma or hopefully other products in the HighWire suite. So these are really just sort of generic ones, and they're going to mainly reinforce the comments that Craig's been talking through. So really a key one is that having a central identity management system. So historically, and thankfully it's becoming less so, but historically we would see publishers having a very siloed setup where an individual website would have its own repository of users and their entitlements. And as they grew and they bring new websites online, then this sort of expands out, and they end up with many, many databases of users and their entitlements. The same user could be in many systems, but with different usernames, and there's no real way to understand the relationship that they have with a user or an institution without some, sort of messy pulling together of all of that data into a central system. By SAMS being a SaaS and a centralized service, it sort of enforces that discipline upon the publishers to store their customers centrally and give them a consistent experience. It obviously brings efficiencies for them in the administration of that. They know they go to one place to see everybody, and they have a full view of what that person has purchased or interacted with on their websites, rather than having to dive into all of these discrete subsystems. By having this centralized service, it means that we can provide a single sign-on. We'll go through this a little bit later with a worked example, but really, that's a huge benefit as publishers are increasingly seeing the need to engage with individuals rather than the institution. Providing a seamless login experience for them really is becoming a differentiator. As Craig mentioned, it is vendor neutral. Again, this is a real bonus. It comes back to that, typically if you go to, let's say, you buy Literatum from Atopon, then the access and control systems are embedded within that. So they can't really be reused elsewhere. So it does sort of promote that siloed approach. So for us, SAMS Sigma is vendor neutral, and really it can as easily be integrated into a third-party website as it can within any of the HighWire products. It's industry specific, so within the sort of the academic publishing space, we have very idiosyncratic rules around how people authenticate, the complex relationships that they have between organizations and individuals, and the sales models. All of those are native to SAMS Sigma. So whereas if you took a system like Gigia, you would have to build that capability outside of it, yet within SAMS Sigma, it comes part and parcel. And of course, we've got the usage reports such as Counter as part of that. It also provides a self-service capability. This has been resistant generally from publishers, but we're seeing a slow shift towards this. And I think as the market matures and publishers understand that they can't handhold the customer through every single data change and every step of the process, the SAMS Sigma provides a self-service website where users can update their login credentials, they can view their own usage statistics and view their own entitlements, all through a self-service portal. And we're seeing publishers are beginning to appreciate that and that it reduces the burden on their customer services team. And of course, not to be forgotten, the SaaS infrastructure. In the previous slide, there was a SAMS logo on there. So we have many customers that operate a SAMS 6 environment, and those are locally installed and hosted versions of the SAMS access control system. And because they are all distributed, it means that rarely are two on the same version, and the upgrade path is very tricky. So it was a key part of SAMS Sigma was to ensure that it was a centralized SaaS infrastructure so that all of the product updates could be rolled out in one go. Everybody will get the benefit of those. It can happen in a zero downtime, very seamless way. And of course, we have a very flexible sort of smart capacity management aspect to that, so the system can flex with the demand it sees. It's probably worth just looking at sort of a representative but hugely simplified example from an actual customer. So this is just really to show how SAMS sits in the middle of their ecosystem. So of course, they have a number of websites. Those are all from varying vendors, yet all of those are communicating with SAMS Sigma for the user and organization authentication and single sign-on capabilities to enable user to bounce between those. They have a user registration portal. So this is sort of part of their messaging, which is quite interesting. So they want to promote the idea of their own user identity sort of passport, as it were, and that they provide the user registration portal that ensures that every user that registers to any one of their websites, it can be validated as a unique identity and created in SAMS Sigma, and also that their profile information can be forwarded on to a CRM. And then, as Craig was mentioning, we have a fairly flexible and powerful set of APIs in SAMS Sigma that enable these subsystems like the membership database or the CRM to push data or even extract data out of SAMS via the API so that data can be synchronized in real time, and it just enables that picture of the customer to be visible as is appropriate in the CRM, SAMS Sigma, the membership database, etc. And you know, where SAMS sits and who is the data controller and which way data flows, that would all be part of the analysis and design phase with the customer. But it really is very flexible. So hopefully that gives a flavour that it is, you know, it's a highly integral part of the publisher's system, and why, if we get a sale with SAMS Sigma, it really enables us to understand what they're doing and provides us a fantastic foot in the door. And it really is a sort of a Trojan horse of an application that enables us to extend our reach within that organization. So a quick overview of how we onboard clients. As you have probably gathered by now, hopefully, it's a fairly detailed and complex sales process. You know, it's a highly technical sale. It's invariably selling to the CTO. It's also, you know, has benefits for most of the C-level operatives at the publisher. And so therefore the sale is generally a long one. 3 to 12 months would be a typical, probably erring towards the latter for any sizable rollout. And it really sort of comes in 4 key stages. So there would be a fairly involved pre-sales process where we meet with them a number of times to assess and map out the benefits in a very sort of tailored way for that particular publisher. We would typically split this into a number of phases in the delivery as well. For any sizable rollout, we would recommend having a distinct analysis and proof of concept phase so that they can take a few of their websites, embed them, maybe take a couple of the subsystems and tie that all together and make sure that it's going to meet all of the business goals that we've set out in the sales process. And then once that's approved, then the data migration is always a fairly large deal. It can often be pulling data from a number of systems rather than just migrating from one place to another. And of course, that has to be carefully staged and managed to facilitate the production rollout. So therefore, in terms of how that's priced, it is very variable. So there is no one price fits all. The setup is typically complexity based, so it'll be calculated maybe upon the man days of development to migrate data across, and the annual license fee is volume based, and that is based on the number of websites that will be integrated with SAMS and the number of sessions. And for sessions, think Google Analytics sessions. So we won't go too detailed into what SAMS Sigma is, but there are a few key entities that you should really get an appreciation of. One is profiles. So within SAMS Sigma, every sort of person or organization is assigned a profile, and individuals and organizations have a discrete set of metadata that can be applied to them. Each of the profiles will typically have one or more authentication identifier, and hopefully those should look fairly familiar to you. They are general industry-specific authentication identifiers. And then the bit that really adds the value is the agreements model within SAMS Sigma. So all profiles can be assigned agreements, and an agreement can cover a multitude of sort of functionality. The most predominant one would be to assign a license or a subscription, so a pay-per-view or a timed access to a piece of content or a collection of content. Consortium member enables us to map profiles together to represent the consortium relationship. Sub-organizations enable us to map perhaps say departments within a larger organization. And then key ones are administrator. That's a highly used one. So that is where an organization can assign an administrator agreement to an individual that enables them to manage that organization on their behalf. And another interesting one is remote user. And so this is the capability to apply a short-term or even perpetual agreement to an individual that will enable them to access the institution's content off campus. So they can just use their username and password for places where they don't have Shibboleth or other systems set up to access remotely and still get access to the content that their organization has provided. And of course, most importantly, that their usage is also counted against that particular organization that has granted them access. So this enables us to draw up a very sort of interesting relationship between all of these entities. I won't go through this. We can certainly ask questions, and we'll provide this in documentation after to explain what it's doing. But in a nutshell, it's a consortium that is providing access to a particular organization. That organization may have a sub-organization, and that there are individuals that belong to both of those organizations that will get access through licenses that they have purchased themselves, and also through agreements that they have with the sort of the hierarchical relationship that is defined within SAMS Sigma. Don't need to take that in now. We will write up who gets access to what for this slide and provide it to you. We've talked a lot about single sign-on, so it's probably just worth quickly clarifying that. Hopefully it's a well-established concept in this day and age, but we do come across certain instances where it's not fully understood, so it's worth spelling out. Back in the day, single sign-on was often referred to where a user could use the same username and password on many websites. That's nice, but of course that does require them to log in every time they visit the website, and they may not necessarily know that they can access that website. So it does require a bit of thought on their behalf. So in a true cross-domain single sign-on system that SAMS Sigma is, here's just a typical user journey. So as we know, people will come in via Google invariably. They get linked to their website. They try to access a premium piece of content. They're denied access. They enter their credentials for that particular website, and they are granted access. That's great. They consume what they want, and they leave. Very, very typical pattern of user behavior there. they find another article that they're interested in having a look at, and they go to, and that's hosted on website number 2. Now, in a normal scenario, website number 2 is then going to ask them to authenticate themselves again. But with SAMS Sigma, because I've already logged into website 1, my device has a special token embedded upon it that enables me to seamlessly log in to website number 2 and automatically gain access to that content. And then if the website is so set up to also link people to related content sites, if my journey continues on to website 3, that is also protected by SAMS Sigma, again, I get automatic login to that. So really, the idea is to sort of reduce the friction of that login experience. You know, and this is something that we do hear a lot. When we were meeting with the BMJ last week, you know, they cited this as one of their key issues, was that Sci-Hub is causing them a real problem because users see that as a less friction way to get access to their content. And we hope that providing, you know, things like the remote user agreement and the single sign-on capabilities, that SAMS Sigma can take those barriers away. And of course, once we've got an individual signed up and we've got their identity, by having a centralized identity that is automatically carried with them across all of the websites, it really is going to hopefully unlock some powerful insight into the analytics, not only within each website, but also enable us to look at a more sort of holistic journey as they transition through the publisher's ecosystem. I think we can now show you an example of that single sign-on in practice.
Yep, certainly can. Okay, so yeah, I'm going to run through basically a demo of the login process. So and show you basically the content site login screens that SAMS Sigma can provide to access these sites. So these are 2 independent demonstration sites. Obviously, we've still got some existing branding on these, and we will make some updates to these. But this should give you the flow. So if I want to log into this site, so yeah, I click the login, and I get access to a SAMS Sigma powered login and authentication box. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sign in via my email and password. The other options are pretty much what we've talked about already. I could authenticate myself via a shibboleth, or actually use an institution authentication mechanism such as library card. IP address is supported. I'm not actually authenticated automatically on this site by IP, but so I will show you a login using my email address and password. So now I've been authenticated. Oh, it has picked up my IP address actually now, which I would have expected. So I'm now authenticated as an individual on this site, which means when I close the login box down, I will have access to actually I've got access to a bundle of content here. So I've got access to licenses that were assigned directly to me, and as I've got a remote access agreement, which Colin mentioned, I've also got access to any content that the institution, in this case it was the Jubilee Library, decided they wanted to give me remotely. So the example there would be that a librarian would have the ability to issue a remote access agreement to a researcher, so they could access the institution's content effectively outside of the boundary of the organisation. So I've obviously authenticated on content site 1. So the concept of single sign-on then translates to the fact that I go to content site 2, which is equally where the registration process is equally controlled by SAMS Sigma. Then without logging in again, without supplying my username and password, I will be authenticated and potentially authorized to access content on this site as well. So, in this instance, it's a different website, and I've got access to different content. So specifically, I've been given access to an article here. Okay, so really that's an overview of the power of SAMS Sigma in order to identify and authenticate users, and that shows the idea that we've talked about the single sign-on. So you authenticate once, and any sites powered by SAMS Sigma won't require an additional login. Okay, so that's the authentication part. I just want to now dive into the administration system. So here we are at SAMS Sigma. So I'm just going to log out. Okay. So SAMS Sigma. So I'm just going to try this again. Log into the admin system. So when I initially log in, I'm logging in as my individual profile. So Colin talked about the difference between individuals and organizations. So when I initially log in, I can see my individual profile, and I've got access to all the data, the information that's stored to me as an individual, and obviously I can update this. I can change my password, and I get a view of all the licenses that have been granted to me. And this is an area also I can see any agreements I've got. In this instance, I have been given administration access for two institutions, and as we saw, I've been given a remote access agreement for the library for that institution. And there is an area where I can potentially redeem a voucher if an institution or publisher required to give me access via a voucher. We'll come on to that in a second. So that's the individual view of a profile. So I'm now going to move on to the organization aspect. So as we've talked about, so a key concept behind SAMS Sigma is the ability to self-serve. So this is allowing effectively an organization administrator such as a librarian to come on and to log into SAMS Sigma and to be able to have pretty much full control over the information stored against their entity, against their organization. So they can update the details and pretty much self-serve. They can update any of the authentication identifiers stored against that profile. And we are seeing a move towards this. I mean, certain publishers are slightly fearful of this, but we're definitely seeing a move to allowing self-serve and to reduce the administrative burden on the customer support staff. And just running through the other aspects that we've already talked about, I can see a view of my license. I can look at any inactive licenses that maybe have already expired. I can set up an agreement. So as an administrator of this organization, I can set up other administrators. I can potentially see any hierarchies, so any sub-organizations attached to this university. In this case, we've got two departments, two sub-units, and these are actually restricted to only being managed by publishers. So I can see this as an organisation, but I can't actually create any of those. Remote access agreements. So as we've already picked up on, this is the ability to offer access to institutional content outside of the boundaries of an institution, by using a remote access agreement. And then in a similar way, consortium member agreements can be created for organisations. Reporting. So as an administrator of Camford University, I can access my Camford 4 reports, and then there is a configuration section, and we talked about the aspect of allowing annotations to be stored against an organisation's profile. So we've covered individuals, we've covered organisations and how they're administrated. The final aspect of Sigma really is the publisher's control. Now, they get access to pretty much control anything in the system. So really, this is where they come in and create organizations. If they've got a new client and they want to sign them up, they would then potentially create administrators who can manage the organization. And then really, I guess, a key aspect of SAMS Sigma is the ability to create licenses. So this is where packages of content are created and licensed out to the publisher's customers. I'll quickly run down the form. So you would assign a license to an organization. Obviously, this license would have a start and end date. It could either be perpetual license, or probably more commonly, it's going to be a set duration. We support the concept of grace periods, just to ease the resubscription and process. A license can have a specific license type. So really, this is to support all the business models that various publishers have. The most common type of license would be subscription, but obviously sites out there increasingly offering freemium access to content trial access that then potentially get converted into full subscription. So really, SAMS Sigma and the licensing area is designed to be as flexible as possible. Just going to quickly run through the content identifiers, because this is how the specific content gets sliced and diced. When you're setting up a license, you effectively decide what that license is going to protect. This can be a very granular level, so DOI, for example, probably the most granular level, but working up to journal access, book access, content filtered by keyword, author, using an ORCID ID, specific URL, and then proprietary identifier, which is any external ID that the content site decides to assign to it. So really, again, just to re-emphasize, this is the flexibility and the power that SAMS Sigma offers our clients, and that can be across multiple websites. Okay, I think we're probably running out of time on our demo, on our presentation. We can do further demos if required, if that would be useful, just to elaborate on the more detailed aspects of the SAMS Sigma interface. But it would really only be re-emphasizing probably a lot of the content that we've discussed in the slides.
We actually do have plenty of time, so
yeah.
What I guess we can do right now is open it up for questions, and there may be requests for other demos and so forth. So we get the questions that came in earlier. Just to clarify, there was a question as to whether this is integrated with Shibboleth.
Yes, so it does support Shibboleth. We are set up to support the basically UK Access Management Federation and the Open Athens Federation. Via the UK Access Management Federation, that's a member of EduGain, so that also has, effectively, it spreads the reach out to, gosh, I don't know, 20 odd other Shibboleth federations. We can add others on request.
Back to your competitive slide. Personify, OAuth, or some of the other identity management systems aren't on there. How do you view those, and where on the spectrum of identity management do you view them on?
So, did you say OAuth?
OAuth, yeah.
Yeah, so OAuth is that's a technology for the login. So SAMS Sigma supports OpenID Connect, which actually is built upon OAuth 2. So that's sort of part and parcel of our support. And Personify is that's a membership system, if recall correctly. So yeah, I think membership. Yeah, I mean we don't have an explicit sort of membership module in SAMS Sigma at the moment. It is very interesting with things like Personify and IMIS and others that we do see publishers integrating that with SAMS. So for Society of Petroleum Engineers, for example, they operate Personify, and the users from Personify get an automatic registration in the website that we generate for them. And going back to that sort of ecosystem picture, that things like IMIS, etc., they do feed data in or extract data out of SAMS in other environments. So currently it's sort of set up to interoperate with those. I think that would be a very interesting future direction to look at, should it become a membership system. But you know, it doesn't provide those sort of membership services at the moment. So.
No, and I think really the sort of competitor slide was there to show the typical sort of competitors that we've seen based on conversations that we've had with clients in the past. And really where we see Sigma being pitched is really in the middle. So we have come up against a lot of competition with identity management systems, where we've also seen the access management system being either a bespoke implementation or a very heavily customized system that we have barely heard of. So it's a lot about understanding what system the client has in place, really, and that's often the springboard for then conversations and pitches into a client.
Okay. This may be a little challenging for you to do at this point, but the question is sort of, why is this an improvement over HighWire's access control, or what are the differences? What does this give you that HighWire's access control doesn't?
Yeah, so I think we're probably at a place of disadvantage in not knowing fully how the current HighWire access system works, but you know, from my understanding, that may be fairly sort of service orientated in its architecture, but it is sort of very much geared towards the workings of JCore currently. So I believe that SAMS Sigma, you know, it is going to provide advantage in that it is a dedicated identity and access management system rather than a service consumed by a content platform. And so I think with that, it just comes with a better structure. Certainly, I think it'd be very interesting. So my understanding from JCore is that every publisher will have their own database managed and operated independently. So, you know, that obviously has a huge burden for us in terms of having to manage all of those distinct databases. Whereas if they were all moved on to SAMS Sigma, for example, then they would all be hosted in the same SaaS environment. But in terms of feature set, you know, I think that would be, I guess that's something that's being investigated at the moment. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think probably over the next few weeks, obviously, Alex, we're having discussions at the moment on possible implementation strategies and how that will look. We can really dig into, you know, where we see the benefits of integrating SAMS Sigma with JCore.
Okay, so can you talk about a couple of specific use cases for SAMS Sigma and give some customer examples?
Okay. I kind of thought we had, so maybe we can go back.
Well, so different specific customers and how they're using it. So if you can sort of walk through what it does for them, why, you know, that is beneficial to using their membership structure.
Okay. Well, if we go back to that example. So if we look at this particular example here, so this is a very simplified view of so obviously this is not for consumption outside of HighWire, but this is a simplified view of the Royal Society of Chemistry. So their as-is system today is that they have a multiple number of websites. Some of those are being authenticated by an in-house built system that they have developed over the years. Some of them use a third party, an independent vendor's system. They have no view over their user across all of those sites. So, for us, we've been speaking to them for an awful long time. This is probably more of a 18-month sale rather than a 3 to 12 months. But essentially, in their specific example, they understood a number of needs. So, number one, why, as a publisher, am I developing and maintaining an identity and access management system? It's not where my specialism lies. That's just ludicrous. As we well know, that sort of almost hand in hand with that, you have other idiosyncratic systems that you have to provide that are directly related, like counter reporting. So again, as a publisher, why would I operate a system either A, that doesn't provide that, or B, that I have to write myself and manage that system? Also, for them, as publishers move away from selling to institutions via IP, which was very popular, it's moving much more towards having a relationship with the individual, and so therefore they're starting to care more and more about how their individual has a journey throughout their ecosystem. They want to make sure that it's the best and most seamless experience for them. Also, that their customer can go to a centralized place and view everything that the RSC know about them, and conversely, that the RSC can go and understand how all of their users are using their systems and how they move from site to site. So, it's really a number of things. I think it's economies of scale, it's a reduction of complexity, it's providing a better user experience, it's sort of commoditizing aspects of their web development, so that they don't have to manage it themselves.
I think from my perspective, I just would highlight another client called RPS, Royal Pharmaceutical Society. So there's a site called PJ Online, Pharmaceutical Journal Online, and they're using Sigma to control the authentication mechanism for identifying individuals on their website. So we migrated them from an existing SAMS 6 installation. So they're effectively the first client to move on to SAMS Sigma. But really, what that's opened up for them is the opportunity to move other sites on and provide the single sign-on, the authentication for individuals between those two sites, so another site called Medicine Complete, but really actually talking to the client, a major benefit that they get out of it is it enables them to merge the various customer profiles that they have in those two systems into one single entity. So they have one area where they're managing their clients, and then equally their clients have one area where they're logging into and viewing their profile.
And it's very much and for them in particular, and with others, it's rarely a big bang. It's usually the start of a journey, and there's a number of phases throughout that. So PJ was the first piece, then Medicine's Complete will be the next. We're discussing about integrating their Oracle membership database with SAMS. So, it really does once we're in there and they are sold and understand the strategic big picture as to why they should take such a system, then it really does feed the pipeline of opportunity.
And actually, just to add to that, though, a key part of it for RPS was that they did have different vendors building these sites for them. So this really was their only opportunity to merge these two sets of customer profiles that they have.
And I think that's also an interesting thing that we will see as more and more people roll out onto SAMS Sigma. It's quite interesting that just between these two customers, they have a vendor. Both of them use the same vendor for different websites. So, they're immediately also getting a sort of collective benefit from the SAMS Sigma community that, okay, well, this vendor knows how to integrate with SAMS Sigma, so they can offer that as a much smoother development path for them.
Question on the flow. Are users automatically signed in when they have access to a resource, or do they have to initiate access?
Website specific. I think we would generally, so from a user's experience, you would want to do the former. Might be some interesting things about counter turnaways that may require the latter, but no, I think the former would be our recommendation. Automatically let them get access.
Okay. And there was an earlier question, I think from your last slide, about identifier type being DOI. What happens with the DOI? To what does the user get access?
Well, that depends what the DOI has been assigned to. So a DOI could be a multimedia item, could be a chapter of a book, could be an article. Yeah, it will entirely depend on what that DOI has been assigned to.
Going back to the automatically signed in process, if users are automatically signed in, does the resource site load more slowly during authentication?
There will be a round trip to the identity provider in order to assess whether the user's been authenticated or not, but
yeah, I mean, I don't think that. Okay, so if the user wasn't automatically identified, most websites, and certainly any, I believe, that we would develop collectively, would be doing an IP round trip to the authentication system anyway. So it's just part and parcel of that.
Yeah, I think we're looking at less than a second. It certainly wouldn't be noticeable or imperceptible, probably.
Going back to the type concept, can you talk a little bit more about what that is and how it's used?
Type concept. Could you give us a clue, please?
Okay, waiting for more. Oops. This was on your last slide in the presentation.
Oh, in the demo?
Oh, okay.
I think for the demo.
Is this in a license? So the license type. Okay. Yeah.
Oh no, in the demo, it's the last screen showing under institution.
So is this the license type, do you think? So the free, freemium, gratis, subscription, text and data mining or trial?
Where they can set the terms of the license.
This?
Okay. Yeah. So really, this is just a way to describe what content needs to be
made available.
Licensed or made available. So what we typically see here is 3 or 4 identifiers being added in. So that could be for journals, for example. It really depends on what the content is that the publisher wants to package up and sell. So
is it worth?
Could you, for example, set up a subscription for 1 DOI?
Correct.
Or set up a license for 1 DOI?
Absolutely, and there's this concept of a content bundle. So Craig was showing the sort of the granular way that we can assign content for that particular license. What would commonly happen is that, say you've got access to 5 journals, or you've got access to 27 books, or whatever it is, they are very likely have already been pre-packaged by the publisher into a content bundle. So you might be buying the mathematics collection or the the neurology set of journals or something like that. And so to save the user having to type in each journal ID or similar, people can just assign a license to a predefined bundle. Hope that makes sense.
And then how would that work with, say, an ORCID ID or a keyword?
So those can be part of the content bundle. So let's go to the content bundle screen. That just makes a bit of sense.
Yeah. So exactly. So these are effectively either products. It depends how you want to define them. They're certainly pre-packaged bundles of content that then can be reused on licenses. So I suppose a typical setup would be you'd have a predetermined set of content bundles, and then what we typically see is publishers creating, and we certainly help with this process as well. We put publishers creating a template for a license. So this is, I'd go in, I'd set up a template. So commonly licensed content it would make sense to create a template, which then could be reused in order to issue a license. So you can create.
So are you just using these identifiers as a unique identifier for that bundle?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And as you can see here, it's designed to be as flexible as possible. There's no sort of predetermined business rules baked into this. The idea is that by offering the flexibility of creating licenses based on very specific content identifiers or prepackaged content identifiers, then this can really be extended to meet the sales models that already exist within our publishers.
And I don't see it here, but we may have passed it on the screens. When you're defining a license, are you defining time periods for that license and
yes, absolutely.
Other kinds of rules around the license?
Yeah, a license has a start date, and then it can either be perpetual or it can be specified for a specified duration. And then really any other rules around that license it's up to the content site to potentially implement. So based on usage terms, so you could set a usage term as well for a license, which may just be download. It may be read and download. There is additionally the option to potentially give an editor of a content site administration access as well, so they can actually go in and edit content. So again, this is really designed to be as flexible as possible. And then it's the content site that would actually implement the rules that were required for that site based on the information that's provided to it via this license.
And with consideration amount, how does that work? Is it
actually really all that is it's just giving a publisher the ability to assign a monetary value to this this license. This isn't, I don't believe, shown to the. It is shown on the license, but yeah, obviously the content that's packaged up under this license is generally bought by an organisation, and it's about being able to represent that on the license. I mean, then it's really what the publisher deems useful for that information. You know, potentially they could look at the usage statistics and figure out how much, you know, per view the cost of that was. Yeah, so it's just really assigning a value for that license.
Yeah, it's sort of twofold. It's a bit of metadata, one for the customer services team, so that they can, you know, if they have to make value-based decisions upon that particular customer and that access that they've been granted. And then, as Craig mentions, you know, in the future, certainly on the roadmap, it would be a consideration for reporting against that, so we can combine usage against consideration to, you know, cost per download and those kind of things.
I'm not seeing any other questions at this time. Folks on the phone, do you have additional questions? Doesn't look like it. I just want to reiterate that we are recording this session, and as soon as it finishes processing, we'll post it, and that we will send out the slides. And I believe, Craig and Colin, you mentioned some additional material you were going to send out?
That's right, yeah. So we've basically tried to cover all of these areas in a written document as well. That's currently under review by Tracy and Jennifer. Once they give their okay to it, we will send it across.
Okay. We check again for questions. Nope. I think we're through. So thanks, everybody. And if you think of additional questions, go ahead and send them through, and I will pass them on to Craig and Colin. Thanks, and we're going to end the session now.
Thank you.
Thank you.